Mike Mentzer, Dorian Yates, Arthur Jones all subscribe to the method of training known as high intensity training, or HIIT training for short. The basic philosophy was that instead of being in the gym for 3 to 4 hours at a time, performing 20 to 30 sets per muscle group to stimulate growth, that if we cut down volume, even as low as one single set, and we perform each exercise to absolute muscular failure, we can achieve similar or even greater results, not only in a fraction of the time, but also with way less recovery demands on the body. Now, is HIIT training as effective as high volume training? That's something that'll be open for debate till the end of time. And we have examples of guys getting great results on both ends of the spectrum. But one thing we need to establish here is that what low volume training means to one person can be very different to another person. It all depends on who you're speaking to. To Arthur Jones and the pioneer of HIIT, that generally meant one all-out set to muscular failure for each individual muscle group, training the entire body, often promoting full body training sessions 3 times per week. Now you have guys like Mike Mentzer who took this a step further. A big step further. He recommended working out even less frequently, maybe 1 time or twice per week at most, and splitting up the body even further in each session, moving from a full body split to now body part split training, lowering the training frequency even further. Now later you had guys like Dorian Yates. He applied HIIT training principles to a more typical bro split style of training, not just doing 1 single set per muscle group, but rather instead of 3 to 4 sets per exercise, Yates would hit 1 working heavy set for each exercise, and then move on to the next movement. Yates' version of HIIT was a more moderate approach and did technically hit multiple sets per muscle group in a session. Now, all these methods, they have a lot of things in common, but they're all very different in application. But the one thing that they have in common is the goal is not to leave reps in the tank. And the main goal is to get the most benefit out of the least amount of work possible. And while I don't agree with many things that HIIT advocates promote, especially the lack of frequency, the one thing that I think they all have nailed down is the last thing I mentioned. Get the most out of the least. And in a world today where it's common to be hyper-focused on every single minute detail in training, guys are now running around performing tons of junk volume. They're running around performing tons of exercises that, quite frankly, don't do for building muscle. And I've seen many guys, even self-proclaimed fitness experts, promoting excessive high volume, excessive high frequency, who literally have not put on any muscle in the last 3 to 4 years promoting these methods. I don't know about you, but that's when I say you need to reevaluate what you're doing. You need to ask yourself, is it even working? But let's talk about some training methods that work without question. They all focus on basic progressive overload. They all have you training with a volume that you can recover from. They all have you following a routine that you can perform consistently for a long period of time. Now, a properly set up HIIT training system can check all of these boxes. An improper one absolutely does not. But let's say you set it up correctly, it's not going to require you a ton of time training in the gym. It will require very high level of intensity, and it does take some smart planning to make it work right. And today, I'm going to walk you through what I personally believe is one of the best approaches to high intensity training or low volume training in general. Now, this is not textbook high intensity training. This is not the exact training that any of the guys I previously mentioned promoted. However, this is a more modernized application in my opinion, given not only what we now know works from years and years of the basics producing serious results, but what modern science and research has shown to produce the best results over and over again when it comes to frequency and volume. And no, it's not that 10 to 20 sets per week recommendation. So today we're going to break down an exact low volume training session for the chest, the shoulders, and the triceps. Low volume, high intensity style. Starting off with chest, we're going to do the basic flat barbell bench press, the exercise that has built the best pecs of the best bodybuilders in the world. We're going to take as many warm-ups as needed here, but roughly 3 to 4 is a good rule of thumb. And we're going to work up to a weight that we can perform roughly 6 to 10 reps with. Now, if you have any discomfort or you need to lighten the loads a bit, you can push that rep range a bit higher to, let's say, 12 or even 20 if you need to. The key here is you still need to perform those sets exactly the same. All out, no reps in reserve. The goal here is 1 single set. Perform as many clean reps as you can, then set down the bar. This is going to be your new standard. Every time you perform this workout, the goal is to progress that lift in some way, whether that's more weight for the same reps or the same weight for more reps. Over time, progression is key here, especially since the volume is so low. Now, movements like the bench press, you must have a spotter when you're pushing all out like this. Or at the very least, you need to set yourself up in a power rack with the catches on for safety. After you push that set to the last clean rep you could do, you should feel a ton of fatigue setting in on the pecs. You should have a ton of blood in the muscle. And most importantly, if you did it correctly, you should feel like if you had to do it again right now for a second set, there's no way you'd be able to perform the same amount of reps again. Now, if you were training with a higher volume, this wouldn't be ideal. But since you're focusing on just 1 single set here, you can't afford to leave anything on the table. Welcome the fatigue. Next up, after we train the pecs with a flat press, we're gonna move on to our second exercise, which will target the upper pecs a bit more. We're gonna use a low incline dumbbell press here. This will give us a bit more natural range of motion and allow us to bring our arms a bit more across the body when we press, training the pecs through their natural function. We're already warm here, so less warm-up sets are needed on the second exercise. But we do need enough just to get our body acclimated to the heavy weight we're about to push. From here, once we're ready to go, we're gonna perform just one single set. Push it for as many clean reps as possible. Don't put it down if you still have more in the tank. Once that set's done, your pecs should be screaming. The fatigue, it should be real. The pump is real, and you should feel like you did more in just those 2 sets than you normally would do in 3 or 4 sets, especially if you were previously leaving reps in the tank. But we're not done yet. We're gonna do one more exercise to finish off those pecs. Now we're gonna move on to something a bit more stable to finish off the pecs. Because we've already trained the pecs very hard with a barbell press, then we moved on to a dumbbell press, we've built plenty of fatigue, even in those 2 sets. And if we're gonna continue training those pecs maximally, we need something here where we can take advantage of the stability. Rather than wasting energy on balancing weights, we can now focus on just squeezing and contracting the pecs. A machine is a great option here. Personally, I like going with a Smith machine Incline, but if you have access to something like a hammer strength press, make sure to take full advantage of it. 1 to 2 acclimation sets here before we load up on the working weight. Then we're good to go. 1 more set here and chest is done for the day. So don't leave anything on the table. That's it for chest. Pecs are cooked. And if you made it to this point and you think that was nothing, I promise you, you left reps in the tank on those sets. But that's okay. Training like this requires skill. It takes time to build the level of skill required to have a productive session with doing only 3 sets for a muscle group. Give it time, keep pushing. Over time, you realize you don't need nearly as much volume as you might think. We're moving on to shoulders now. The front delts were already hit heavily in all 3 pressing movements we did. Now, if you need more attention to that muscle group, you can add a press here. Personally, I need more side and rear delt work. And adding another press here for me personally is just less than ideal. I could use more work on that pec delt tie-in, and I could even get some more trap work. So in my case, the first exercise that we're gonna start off with are dumbbell front raises. Warm those shoulders up, then get to work. 1 all-out set. On any raise, it's much more difficult to establish true failure. On a press, once you can't move the bar forward anymore, you hit the wall. On a raise, you could either swing more, you could do more partials, you can adjust your technique to keep the set going. So the best thing you could do to know when to end that set is first standardize your technique, then perform every single rep the same. Don't allow yourself to break form. Now, once you can't raise to the same height, that's the last clean rep. Now, you could do a couple partials at the end of the set to really milk that set. Those aren't the reps that you count. Claim those strict reps and then aim to beat them over time. Next exercise, we're gonna hit the side delts. Basic side lateral raises work great here, but honestly, any side raise you connect with is fine. Now, the technique that I personally use here, it's definitely not textbook. I like a slight bit of rocking, but make no mistake, my side delts are on fire here. The key is every rep is performed the same. That way I know once I'm about to break form, that's when the set is over. I'll push these lateral raises as far as I can until I break form. Once I do that, I stop counting the reps. That's the number that I'm aiming to beat over time with standardized technique. But I'll usually push for partials after the set's over. This is just to ensure that the muscle's fully exhausted. And I got everything I can from that 1 single set. 1 more exercise to finish off the side delts, and that's the braced incline lateral raise. I'm gonna lean forward on these. Instead of raising my arms out just to the sides, it's more of a 45-degree angle on those arms. That's gonna help round out those delts even more. Now, my delts are already super fatigued and pumped at this point, so I'm not gonna need much weight at all. But again, the same rule applies. As many reps as I can perform up until the last clean rep. Now, I don't care if you push the rep ranges very high here. The goal really isn't to hit a specific number of reps on any of these movements. The goal is to push this set as far as you can and aim to beat it over time. Delts completely done after just 3 sets. So far, I've only done 6 working sets of the entire workout. My chest and shoulders, they don't need any more work. It's time to finish off with triceps. We're gonna move on to triceps and we're gonna start off with the V-bar press down. Cable variation here works great for ensuring the elbows are feeling good right out of the gate. Heavy extensions with barbells and dumbbells are one of the best exercises for triceps, but performing them after we get those elbows warm is key for longevity. 3 to 4 warm-ups here are great just to establish your top working set. Then it's 1 all-out working set. No reps left in the tank. Now with isolation movements and even some machines, we can push those sets until the muscles actually fail under the load. Something like tricep extensions, It's just not that fatiguing to the body. Pushing these to true failure really won't beat you up. Now, something like barbell presses, I personally always advise taking those to the last clean rep you can perform and avoiding any reps that you know you can't complete. Training low volume like this, you need to know when to pick your battles. The goal isn't actually failure in low volume training. The goal is progression with any training. But with low volume, you need to push those sets. Now that the elbows are warm, let's get to the meat and potatoes and the heavy mass building exercise. Easy bar skull crushers. Warm up progressively here. Then get to your top weight and get after it. After a hard set of skull crushers, your entire tricep should be completely pumped. And people get caught up on, is this exercise for the long head? Is it for the short head? Bottom line is it's a mass building movement. If you do these correctly, and more importantly, progressively, you're gonna build triceps so big, you're not gonna have to worry about which specific head you need to target. Last exercise of the day, 9th working set. We're gonna use one more exercise to finish off the triceps here. Now, since there's a lot of fatigue that is set in at this point, for me, I wanna keep things stable here, just so I can squeeze and contract those triceps as hard as possible. I'm gonna move over to the Smith machine here, and I'm gonna perform a skull crusher JM press hybrid. The goal here is to still perform a tricep extension, but doing so in the Smith machine, that allows me to squeeze and contract without having to focus so much on technique. I'm literally just contracting my triceps as hard as possible here under a heavy load, performing a bit of a hybrid movement here. Again, at this stage of the workout, the added stability helps me further target the muscle that I want to train, while not having to focus so much on balance and technique here. At this stage, everything's fatigued. After this set, you're done. 9 total working sets for this session, 6 for the chest, 6 for the delts, 6 for triceps. And if you did it correctly, all 3 muscle groups should be maximally pumped and completely fatigued. And if you warmed up efficiently, this is definitely something that you should be able to do in about 60 minutes max. And if you're not very strong and don't need a ton of warm-up time, you could probably run through it even quicker. And with this lower volume, you could also perform this workout more frequently. I personally like doing this type of workout twice per week, or at the very least, once every 4 to 5 days. Now, if you're more advanced, you're going to have 2 variations of this workout. The second one would be different exercises. That'll prevent you from stalling out quicker and will allow you to keep beating the logbook consistently. But either way, I want you to think about it like this. Even if you perform just 3 sets, but if in 3 months, 6 months, or a year from now, you're training with double or even triple amount of the weight that you performed on day 1 of doing this, how much bigger do you think you're going to be? At that point, does it even matter that you train with only 3 sets as opposed to 6 or 10? People get so caught up in the optimal number of sets and reps, but at the end of the day, they're just a tool to get you to the end goal and to the most important thing in training. That is progression. Focus on progression and you'll realize how little most of the other details really matter. If you want to build more muscle, apply these techniques to your training now. And if you want the exact training system that I personally recommend to build more muscle using proven old school bodybuilding methods, including the workouts, the methodology, training splits, the templates, everything you need to build more muscle, check out my old school mass gain training system below. And as always, if you want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.